Hey, pizza people, welcome back. We've got some exciting tournament coverage for you today. This was May 29th, slice of historic event. We've got John Likes Games and Hamhocks42 on the commentary. You can find links to all their content, and you can also find links to all the tournaments that we hold every month. We hold 3 a month. They are free to play. Starting in June, we've got the Explorer format included as well. So you can find all these in the description below, and I hope you enjoy the video.
Huge thank you to all those wonderful folks making this tournament happen. We are on a delay just for, the interests of competitive honesty and all that sort of thing. We don't want anybody cheating or anything, obviously. So we do appreciate all of you wonderful viewers out there who are taking the time out of your day to watch the tournament. It helps, it helps. It also helps if you drop follows. It tells the sponsors and things people are watching, people are enjoying it, so do that. Drop the primes too. I'm a streamer. Hamhocks is a streamer. We're not saying, oh, come to our channel and drop the prime. That would be great and all that stuff. But honestly, what Pizza's doing here is important. So if you've got your prime just hanging out, drop it and let them know that you support the tournament scene. So here we go. Voice of Serenity playing a Plains on turn 1. Here we are into the quarterfinals. Or I'm sorry, the semifinals.
Excellent. You love to see it. And I couldn't, I have to agree. Just couldn't echo those, that sentiment more. Thank you to everybody. And yes, like Prime subs, gift subs, they all help out so much. Yeah. All right. So Voice of Serenity with the mono white mid range and going up against Brian on Jun Food. So we've got the Reckoner Bankbuster on turn 2 by Voice of Serenity, holding back a Skyclave Apparition and a Brutal Cathar. So John, how do you feel about Voice of Serenity's hand here?
Well, the Mayhem Devil is absolutely horrific. This will ruin everything about your day and probably your life if it stays. So you have to get rid of it. For me, it's a question of, do you expect Brutal Cathar to live? If you think Brutal Cathar might live, you want to use it now and save the Skyclave Apparition for the oven, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you think Brutal Cathar is not long for this world because your opponent might have, let's say, Fatal Push or something like that, which admittedly, Fatal Push a little bit more difficult to trigger here at the time without any ovens or anything. But there are 2 Fatal Pushes, 2 Strangles on the list, 2 Binding the Old Gods on the list, 2 Meathook Massacres on the list, which they just want to fire off a lot of the time anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Then you might consider Skyclave Apparition just to make sure that Mayhem Devil never shows back up. It's tough, though. Oh, boy. Well, that's good news.
That is good news. So it's nighttime, and if Brian double spells here, it flips back to daytime, and that Brutal Cathar is going to get an opportunity to eat something else.
And Ham, I believe we were just talking about this not that long ago. One of the things you want to do in your deck, in your list, is what are your cards doing when you're behind? What are they doing when you're ahead? Things like that. One of the key reasons 2-drops in Magic the Gathering are so important to so many lists, just Magic in general, is that on turn 1 you play a 1-drop, on turn 2 you play a 2-drop, on turn 3 you play a 3-drop. Yes, on turn 4 you can play a 4-drop. But what happens when you're behind? Your opponent just kills it and kills you, right? Oftentimes on turn 4, being able to play 2-drop opens the game wide open, right? And so with Voice of Serenity,
I mean, that's true. Yeah, that's very true. Being able to hit two 2-drops on turn 4 is good. But Brian says, okay, John, I hear you. But what about a 5-drop on turn 4?
See,
and that 5-drop happens to be Corvold. That's not bad, right?
This is not reasonable. It is fair in the sense that it's not cheating, but it hurts. You don't want to see that if you're sitting on the mono white side. That stings.
Absolutely. Yeah, because Skyclave Apparition notably can hit permanents up to mana value of 4. Well, Corvold is 5, so what you gonna do? That said, Voice of Serenity does have an opportunity to double spell here with the Containment Priest, flipping it to daytime, giving Brutal Cathar a shot at Corvold.
Now, the problem is, what happens if Brian does have Fatal Push or something, right? They just get the Corvold back. Admittedly, it would have Summoning Sickness if it goes away. But, I don't know. A little scary.
Scary. Well, at this point, I mean, Voice of Serenity has all their eggs in that one basket. that one Cathar shaped basket, and that thing needs to stick around. Otherwise, they're going to be in rough shape.
Well, I folks, many of you
Oh,
may have noticed Containment Priest doing work against the Fable. That that is not a bug. That is not a glitch. Containment Priest coming to decks near you. It's
yep. The
very
Containment Priest specifically says if a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead, because the reflection of Kiki Jiki is the backside of the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. It is not a token creature,
yeah.
and the Kamigawa sagas do exile and then enter the battlefield. So as a result, Containment Priest does come
Oh,
into
this
play
is
there.
so huge. Oh my goodness. Okay, so folks, all of our commentary has been predicated on the idea that Brian has a list full of removal, so they were going to be able to get rid of the other Containment Priest. Now, if Brian removes the Containment Priest and then tries to remove the Brutal Cathar, Voice of Serenity can flash in the other Containment Priest and prevent those non-token creatures from entering the battlefield. This is a beating. The second, oftentimes when you draw one of your hate pieces, you're like, yeah, that's great, but you know, I'd rather just draw another action card or something. This is all that Voice of Serenity wants to be doing right now.
Absolutely. Well, and we talked, in a previous match about the value of the clock. Well, Adeline, one of the things that makes that card so powerful is she sets the tone. She sets a clock. There's no question. And with that 4 toughness, it's very difficult to take her out in combat. And I mean, the Gilded Goose definitely is just not going to. I mean, it may buy some time, but that's it.
Agreed.
Yeah, and the Skyclave apparition going after the Trail of Crumbs makes a lot of sense because that is the card draw engine. And Brian is short on cards right now and short of permanents on board. And Voice of Serenity wants to keep it that way.
See, you're saying short, 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 short. What I'm hearing is behind, 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 behind. How does Brian catch up? Is Meathook Massacre enough? Does that do it?
Well, interestingly, they did sacrifice a land to Corvold earlier. So that actually, I mean, speaking of being put behind, I mean, yeah, I don't know that Meathook Massacre does it. Now, they do have a Besaijo who endures in their hand. Oh, and interestingly enough, Voice of Serenity plays out the other Containment Priest, Cruise the Reckoner Bankbuster. That's a lot of damage coming through.
It is. Good heavens, folks. 4 lethal. Jeez Louise. I don't know that Voice of Serenity, or I'm sorry, that Brian was doing the math over there when they decided to tap their Gilded Goose. They kind of took away the required chump block to stay alive. Admittedly, I'm sure Brian was just saying, I'm so far behind. My only hope is that Voice of Serenity doesn't see lethal, right? And maybe focuses on the wrong thing. But is what it is. Voice of Serenity taking down game 1. It is what it is. I'm sure Brian was not pre-boarded to handle mono white, but mono white was pre-boarded to handle sacrifice. At least,
well, yeah. And if you're stepping into a historic tournament, you need to know you're at some point during the day you're going to go up against sacrifice. Like it's a very popular archetype, and for good reason. It's incredibly powerful. So I can appreciate wanting to have those answers lined up and ready to go, and they did.
They did. They absolutely did. Now, looking at all of these sideboard options, I'm not sure it gets much better.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like what do you board in when you're already running 4 Containment Priests in the main? I mean, you already have the hate for exactly what your opponent's doing.
Yeah,
Locked and loaded.
Presumably the rest in pieces, right?
Okay, sure. Yeah.
But like, I don't know how much else. And admittedly, I do think it's notable that Jun Food does get the 3 thought seizes, which almost certainly come in. But admittedly, well, they get Claim the Firstborn too. There are a pair of those hiding out.
Okay.
Which this seems like a reasonable place for those as well. Anytime you have an oven out and you can take one of the smaller creatures and then sacrifice it and get a primary resource for your deck, food, an opportunity to sacrifice things later on, but also right now it feels like you're playing a different format. Like what are you doing here? Your cards do too much. Stop. But you know, how do you feel about this?
It's a risky keep because there are 3 lands there, but only 1 is white. Now, to be fair, Voice of Serenity is playing a monocolored deck, so if they draw any lands, it's probably going to be a white source. So by the time they get the 4th land for the Wandering Emperor, they'll probably be fine. But that Rest in Peace just... Oh, there's a Amiri's Call. That could be a land here easily enough. But
You
March
just
of the
run it
Worldly
out?
Light, I mean, yeah, this hand looks great in my opinion. I think it looks...
Yeah, I mean, do you just run out the Amarius Call this turn?
I probably do. That way you don't have to... because going up against the Sacrifice deck, your life total is precious and it's going to get eaten away throughout the course of the game. So having to... I wouldn't want to be in a position later where I'd have to shock or bolt that in for 3 damage. I probably would have run out the Amiri's Call there.
Oh boy. Okay, so Brian has the dream, like living the dream. But Rest in Peace has this really odd sort of text on it. Rest in Peace essentially says on this board, nothing. It doesn't have text until it matters, and then that text is stupid. Because there's nothing, you know, when it comes in, exile all graveyards. Well, there's nothing in the graveyard, so it doesn't do that. And then if a creature would die, exile it. But you know, you're not killing any of their creatures. The deal is Brian's trying to kill their own creatures. And geez, anytime you can have 2 ovens and a cat, you have a ridiculous clock, right?
Oh yeah. No, it's incredible. And then, and I mean, even starting with the 2 fast dual lands, I mean, that was the perfect turn 1, turn 2 setup for Brian. Like, honestly, I've played Sacrifice decks before, and if you can get the Cauldron Familiar down on 1, followed by 2 ovens, get all 3 of them down on turn 2. It doesn't really matter what order you get them in. Like, you feel like $1 million. It's the best feeling in the world. The only thing that could make it better was a Mayhem Devil on 3. But that Rest in Peace, man, it shuts the whole thing down so badly.
It really does. And again, Brian not going to do much. Oh.
Okay.
These are good cards. Is this enough, though?
That's a good question. I mean, to claim the first person can deal with the token that the Wandering Emperor is likely to produce, or one of the that could be produced by those Amiri's calls later. So that's something. I don't think the Elite Spellbinder really impacts either of those 1-drops particularly, or enough at this point.
No, I concur on that front. I'm just, man, Voice of Serenity has some very, very powerful things lined up on the, in the upcoming turns here. Is there going to be enough power in Brian's hand to be able to handle those?
That's a good question. I mean, especially because the primary engine has been shut down by the Rest in Peace. I mean, if it wasn't for that Rest in Peace, I'd say, yeah, no, Brian's not out of this thing yet. Just watch. We'll see. But without being able to do those cat loops and really chew away at Voice of Serenity's life total, early in the game, because that's really what that sack deck depends on. Because it doesn't win by big swings late. It wins by hitting for 2-3 life every single turn. And it just can't do that anymore. Like in the current state.
And I do want to let everybody know the game is not over, for the record.
Oh, not at all. Yeah.
Brian is well aware that the card Rest in Peace exists, and the board is rife with options to handle it, including some in the main as well. There are Binding the Old Gods in the main. There's Rascal Guy Queen that could come in. There's Cindervines that are in the side that likely could have came in, probably even, let's say, came in. There are 2 Besejus, which are in the mana base that are almost certainly still here, obviously. So there are plenty of options for handling this. The issue is that until you have them, it's just so tough. Brian has time. What does Brian do here? Brian, yeah, this is tough because Voice of Serenity has the 5th land already. You draw more lands. Okay, you're almost to making 8 power and toughness that are flying as soon as you make it to 7 mana. Alternatively, you're drawing action.
Yeah,
this is great. right?
Well,
It feels like every draw is good for Voice of Serenity right now.
absolutely. Well, and Brian was picking up another land in addition to that claim the firstborn. Ouch. I mean, that hurts. So at this point, I mean, this is definitely Voice of Serenity's game, and they're already up a game. So I mean, this is game 2. Uh, yeah. So they run out one Amiri's Call as the land, chip in for a little bit of damage. Yeah, and Voice of Serenity was perfectly fine with sitting back in those early turns and just saying no and playing the control game, preventing Brian from setting up the engine that they were trying to get going. And now it's time to, to turn the corner, as we say, and start applying pressure to that life total. And they're going to do it in fine fashion here.
Oh man, look at this. I mean, we know about the Claim the Firstborn, and folks, they'll steal it. They'll kill the Wandering Emperor. They'll almost certainly take the Elite Spellbinder, kill the Wandering Emperor, and handle some of the most threatening things on board. The problem is there's still 4 power and toughness across 2 separate bodies over there on the Samurais, and again, these angels are looming, right?
Oh yeah.
Brian's got to draw quick. What is it if you're sitting in Brian's seat? What is the card that you feel like you have to draw here to get out of this mess?
I mean, some kind of removal for Rest in Peace, I think, is really what needs to happen. Followed shortly thereafter by, I mean, that Claim the Firstborn here is a good play. You can do a lot of good things with it. But yeah, I mean, the double Witches Ovens are on the field, and that is a key piece to the puzzle. So they need an answer for the Rest in Peace. Once they have an answer for the Rest in Peace, then they need to get a Cauldron Familiar going and get the cat loops started.
Oh boy, Reckoner Bankbuster. That
Wow.
is a draw, folks. Okay, but maybe for those of you who are maybe new to Magic the Gathering or are unfamiliar with this card in general, this enables you to pay 2 mana and draw a card, and by tapping it. So you get to draw an extra card every turn cycle, and then after you draw a couple of cards, you can't do it anymore. So you get 3 new cards. But that is huge here. Voice of Serenity is already up several cards, already up on creatures on board, already has their hate piece, has these angels, like I say, they're just almost ready to come down, and they're getting to draw extra cards. Here comes a second Rest in Peace, folks. Brian was going to require removal for that Rest in Peace for their deck to truly function on the way it's intended to function. Not saying that it can't ever win without its graveyard, but it's intended to work with the graveyard. And here comes another piece that they'll have to remove before they can execute their own game plan. Really difficult to get through.
Yeah, and there is notably one card in the historic format that could deal with both of these Rest in Pieces in play. And I'm looking at Brian's list, and it does not look like it's present, and that is Maelstrom Pulse.
Yes,
I think
agreed.
that's the card that Brian really wants to draw now that there are 2 of them. But alas, it's not in the deck.
Agreed. Looks like Reckoner Bankbuster again, folks, putting in those extra draws. Reckoner Bankbuster has now drawn 2 cards, folks, which means this 7th land would have been delayed 2 full turns. But now it's looking like Voice of Serenity, if the board position doesn't change or anything like that, might just be able to untap and put 2 4/4 flyings onto the battlefield. That would be 10 power and toughness across 3 separate bodies. Holy cow.
And here they get an opportunity to Field of Ruin the Phyrexian Tower just for good measure. And then they're also going to be able to drop the Containment Priest and then a turn just to add a little bit more power to the board, if they so choose. They could also hold it back.
How would you deploy your hand here? Would you just hold it back in case there's Meetup Massacre stuff?
I would, I will be honest. I would probably run it out, but I don't know that that's the right play.
That's fair.
That's probably how I would do it. But that might be me just getting greedy, which I often do. I'll own that.
Yeah, I absolutely understand. And for what it's worth, I think I would fall into the other camp. I think I would be tempted to hold on to the Containment Priest, but you are potentially changing the clock. If the opponent can, has, let's say, a Fatal Push or something for one of your angels, it really slows down the clock a lot. So for the record, my play might be too cautious. And then sometimes you lose because you don't do enough, right?
Right, and without being able to see our opponent's hand. I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Well,
See,
it's funny too because there are so many cards throughout Magic's history that allow you to look at your opponent's hand, and some of them see phenomenal play across formats like Thoughtseize and Gataxian Probe, which has been banned in just about everything. Meanwhile, there are other cards like Glasses of Urza or Telepathy that don't see any play anywhere, and I wonder why that is. At least in Commander, like why aren't those anyway? I guess that's just amusing for another day. Oh wow, and Brian has Corvold. That actually isn't bad.
yeah, gets to sacrifice the angel. We knew the angel was going to be sacrificed anyway, but the important thing here is that Brian gets to draw a card when something is sacrificed. So March of Otherworldly Light can handle Corvold, but it already drew one card, and then they'll sacrifice it to the Witch's Oven, and is what it is, right? But as far as cards Brian could have drawn to make steps towards getting back into the game, let's say, I feel like that was a good one.
Yeah, no, I agree. It pulls the removal out of Voice of Serenity's hand. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's a it's a card that ultimately allowed them to sacrifice a creature and draw 2 cards. I mean, that was the most expensive Deadly Dispute I think I've ever seen.
You're not wrong. You're not
But hey, sometimes that's exactly what you need.
Well, but in fairness, it's also notable that they sacrifice their opponent's creature. So,
True. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Another Witch's Oven. Not exactly what they needed at the moment.
Yeah. I wonder how many of those Cindervines, Vraskas, and Binding the Old Gods, all that stuff. I wonder how many of those are in the list still. Like, are those cards here? Right?
That's a good question.
Because
Yeah.
Brian's not been drawing them.
Right, and it's very possible that they sideboarded perfectly and have all the answers in the deck and they're just not bubbling up to the top. I mean, we've all seen that happen.
Absolutely true.
Yeah, it's also possible that they aren't there, so we'll see. All right, so Voice of Serenity is going for the kill shot here. Does Brian have a response?
Not playing around Settle the Wreckage. We'll see if Brian has a Settle the Wreckage. If there is a Settle the Wreckage on Brian's side, there will also be a disqualification.
Yeah.
We
will all be very confused, but yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Noxious Grasp is a good hate card going up against mono white, sure.
And it is enough to get the turn back. And of course, they were doing that because they were hoping that Trail of Crumbs might draw them out of this disgusting mess. And Voice of Serenity says, no, we're not having any of that nonsense.
Yeah.
You can stay in this mess. Thank you very much. And Brian gets their one measly card for the turn. Is it a miracle?
Man, if that had shown up a few turns ago, this could be a very different game. But alas, it's just too late.
It is just too late. All right, folks. Good game. That was hard fought and well earned on both sides. For what it's worth, I do think Brian maybe got just a little bit unlucky not drawing their response. But Voice of Serenity has gotten this deep into the tournament with these cards in the list, and there is an opportunity cost.
All right, it looks like our competitors are making their way to the arena, so to speak, and getting ready to throw down on the finals of the Historic Slice today. I'm excited. This is going to be delightful. Yes, we have Sir Hamilton on Silesia Humans, and and we have Voice of Serenity on Mono White Midrange.
Yeah, make sure to get your predictions in, folks. We are going to have a sweet battle in the top seat, but Ham, how about your prediction? Pick a seat. Are you a mono white gamer or are you a Selesnya gamer?
It's funny you ask because I think both of these decks are really sweet. And it's funny when I have to make a prediction, we're going into the finals like this. I oftentimes look at whoever's playing the least meta deck and I kind of lean that way. Like if one person was bringing Golgari Food, I'm like, I got to root for them to go down. I'm sorry. Like, kind of like rooting against the Yankees. It's really easy to do in my opinion, but meaning no offense to any Yankee fans out there, of course. But in this case, we have two decks that I think are actually fairly spicy lists that, I don't know, maybe I've been out of Historic for a little while, but this isn't the Arclight Phoenix, this isn't the Arcanist, this isn't Golgari Food. I like both of these lists very much, as a matter of fact. But I gotta say, we are watching from Voice of Serenity's perspective with the mono white mid-range list. And if you asked me 3 months ago, would I be rooting for mono white in a tournament setting? I'd be like, I doubt that. Are you sure? Um, but this list is different enough from so many other mono white lists out there. I mean, this is truly mono white mid range. It's not just they're not just calling it that. They've truly built mono white mid range here, and I find that very interesting, and I want to see it succeed. So that's, I think, the one I'm rooting for. But at the end of the day, I want to see some good clean Magic. How about you, John?
Yeah, I would have said the same, but since you chose Voice of Serenity,
you gotta stop giving me the first choice. Yeah,
I know it. I know, I'm constantly punishing myself here. But honestly, if you had asked me 3 months ago if I would have voted or rooted for mono white, I would have said absolutely, beyond any shadow of a doubt, because I was a mono white gamer way back when
sure,
when it was punishing to be a mono white gamer.
Svan Alliance, let's go.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So yeah, unfortunately for your horse, though, Voice of Serenity looking at this Fragment Reality as the only spell able to be cast, just a single land in Voice of Serenity's hand to open. And they're thinking about having to get rid of the Esper Sentinel, and in fact they do, but that draws Sir Hamilton a card, and you're already, oh my god.
Thank goodness for that plant.
Oh boy. I was just getting ready to make a point about how if you don't get that land, the game ends, but
pretty much, yeah. If Voice of Serenity went like 2 draws without seeing a land, I don't see how they could have come back. I mean, it is really that simple. Being stuck on one land with very few playables, and the only playables being removal, that would have been pretty rough. That said, Sir Hamilton coming out swinging with an Esper Sentinel followed by a Ranger Captain of Eos. Wow. Okay.
That is gross. Getting another Esper Sentinel. Admittedly, these creatures can tap for mana because of the Catilda, but of course they have Summoning Sickness, so they're not going to be able to now. They don't have haste. If your Voice of Serenity, do you just run out the Containment Priest?
I think so at this point, because with what Sir Hamilton's doing, that ability is probably not going to be particularly relevant in this matchup, and you need bodies on board.
Well, I mean, it gets the Collected Companies, and it gets the Inquisitor Captain.
That's fair.
And those are your best draws for slamming the door. The problem is, I don't think they need to slam the door. Just very gently close it on you. When you're stuck on land, it's probably good enough, typically,
Yeah, I mean, unless there's some planes at the top of this library for Voice of Serenity, yeah, that door is going to close, and they're just going to watch it shut. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so going after Catilda with the Fragment Reality, do you pay?
I mean, the other option is to leave Portal Hole up, but yeah, I can appreciate paying it here. Pay the tax while still manageable, knowing that another Sentinel's coming down.
It is true. Now, it's also notable that Esper Sentinel only triggers on the first spell you cast each turn. So you could have cast the Portable Hole without allowing the draw, right?
True. Yep.
But
the other thing that was notable there is Fragment Reality did spin into a creature, and Containment Piece prevented it from entering the battlefield.
Yes.
So that was pretty fantastic.
Good point. Now, Inquisitor Captain, like we were just talking about, going to do the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you pick. One of them's going to the library, one of them's going to exile. Yep.
It's true. Now, Inquisitor Captain, admittedly, is still just 3/3 Vigilance, which in this matchup is kind of good, You
could do a lot worse, that's for sure. Ooh. And those Bank Busters that we were so eager to praise earlier are not looking so hot here. I mean, you don't really have another play. I'd still play it out and hold up the ability to draw a card with it next turn, but Voice of Serenity disagrees and goes for the Portable Hole plan. Okay.
And going after the Esper Sentinel, just try and stop the card draw. Admittedly, Voice of Serenity does have a relatively high life total, and 2 Skyclave Apparitions means as soon as the third land does show up, you can answer a lot of things. Okay, there's another Esper Sentinel.
My goodness.
That's annoying. down to 11. So remember all those words I was just talking about? Like, okay, all right, there we go. I was just gonna say, like, they're going to be null and void if you don't get a land, but there is a land. So what do you go for here? Just the Ranger Captain of Eos or the Inquisitor Captain? Because the Inquisitor Captain has Vigilance.
Yeah, the Vigilance is problematic.
But it is also going to give back a 4/4.
True.
You're not attacking anyway, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a toss-up. I could have flipped a coin on that one.
Agreed. Now, that the good news, if you're sitting in Voice Serenity seat, folks, is that you know,
Ouch.
is that the good news is beginning to dwindle, I guess. Uh, the Skyclave Apparition is going to be able to come down. What do you hit though?
You know,
Gotta be the Adeline, I guess. But then that Cave of the Frost Dragon is actually kind of threatening at this life total. Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna take 3 down to 8. Oh boy. Okay,
Starman
Starman
Unleashed is yeah, that's an interesting one.
It just the 4th power and 4th toughness in the air means Cave of the Frost Dragon doesn't just kill you in a couple of turns, right?
Yeah, that's huge.
As long as, of course, Voice of Serenity gets a land drop, which is not a given, for the record. Now, you just jam with both of these, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, I was going to say, it's that you get a 3/3 in recompense for your 3/3 going away, but you do take away one of their creatures. You know, I mean, that's got to be a fine trade, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to do it. It is what it is.
Down to 5. Names white with Forsaken Crossroads. It is tapped. Scries to the top. What is that? Okay, Longlord Home, folks. This might be a card you're unfamiliar with because it is not the sort of card that sees a ton of play, but it is an interesting one. 2 mana, exile target creature. At the beginning of the next end step, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a 1/1 counter on it. So you can exile your own Skyclave Apparition, or you could exile their token, potentially, right? So I think that's pretty darn good. Welcome in the Raiders. We're a few minutes late. There is a delay, but darn it, appreciate you, the Real Killer Dub, dropping in that raid. Welcome in, welcome in.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Raiders, for being here. We appreciate you. All right, and this is the finals of the Slice of Historic here today. Now, do you long road home the Cave of the Frost Dragon to buy some time, or do you go after the token because it permanently exiles?
I think I exile the token because your Starnheim Unleashed has got to be the plan for the Cave of the Frost Dragon, right?
It has to be, yeah. And you certainly don't want to put a counter on that thing because then that prevents the cave or the Starnheim Unleashed from really doing its job effectively.
I mean, I can kind of understand the perspective here, but yeah, bummer.
Ouch.
Okay, the 4th land doesn't show up. Yeah. And of course, I assume Voice of Serenity was assuming that the Containment Priest was going to eat that creature. Not the case. It is not a creature. It comes back as a land because when it enters the battlefield, it's land, right? So maybe that was just a little bit of an error, but it doesn't matter. They didn't draw the land anyway. Voice of Serenity doing the quick math, praying that Sir Hamilton forgets that Cave of the Frost Dragon can become a creature again.
Sometimes you got to give your opponent an opportunity to mess up, but that is not going to be the case here.
Yeah.
Sir Hamilton's been competing at Magic for a little while, knows where the Cave of the Frost Dragon is, and that is going to close it out.
All right, so my White Knight has taken down game 1, folks. But we're getting to see the sideboarding from Voice of Serenity's side. How would you sideboard in this matchup to shut down the Selesnya Menace over there on the other side?
That's tricky. I mean, I can appreciate bringing the Archon of Emeria. I think that makes some sense. I mean, Archon of Absolution also comes to mind with it having protection from white and adding that ghostly prison style effect, because ultimately we didn't really get to see the chance for it to pop off that game, but that Selesnya humans list is trying to go wide with humans. And so taxing the attack, I think, could buy some time, especially in the early game. So I would bring an Archon of Absolution here personally. And maybe even the Baneslayer Angel.
Right? That's so expensive.
It is.
I would bring in Baneslayer Angel. I don't have a good defense for it because it's my favorite card, but like, I would do it.
I get that. I absolutely get that.
I do think First Strike and Lifelink is the sort of thing that comes up far too often when you're expected to be on the back foot. And for the record, I do think Voice of Serenity is going to be on the back foot. Whether or not they can stabilize is irrelevant because, you're just expecting to have to be doing some blocking, doing some stabilizing when your opponent's being this aggressive. And there are plenty of times when maybe there's a lethal attack coming through or something like that, and you can first strike in, and just gaining that life in the first strike damage can really, really matter, and depending on what kind of shenanigans your opponent's arranging. But also just first strike. It's a combat stat that just matters, So I think I would do that. It's specious justification to get my favorite card on the list. And unfortunately, Voice of Serenity does not agree.
It is unfortunate. Baneslayer Angel is one of those cards when you first read it, you're like, okay, it's good, but is it really that good? And then you see it in action. It's like, okay, yeah, no, it really is. It's great. It can take over a game when given the chance, at least as far as combat is concerned. Flying first strike lifelink all on one body for 5 mana. That's great. I mean, I get it. I see the appeal, to say the least. So I think it would fit in here. I mean, I think it's smart of Voice Serenity to have it at least in the sideboard. The fact it's only a 1 of, I'm also kind of curious about. But I mean, it is a 5-drop in a format that's pretty darn fast. So I can appreciate that.
Okay, Sir Hamilton, no 1-drop, which is, it doesn't sound like that's, that's not normally something you'd be like, oh, yes, big win. But it is, the best draws from the Selesnya deck are going to involve, like Dauntless Bodyguard, Thraben Inspector, that sort of thing coming down on 1, and then maybe Catilda on 2 sort of thing. So not having those does not by any means mean that Sir Hamilton is hamstrung, but I would say that it's good for Voice of Serenity that has not manifested in this particular case, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Outland Liberator on 2, not a bad drop. Again, these pesky human werewolves are this one
At
at least
least
looks
this one
human on
looks
the front
like
page, so
human.
that's not bad. Well, and interestingly enough, actually, with the werewolves from the most recent trip to Innistrad, they're, if I'm not mistaken, all of them, or at least most of them, are humans on their front face and then just werewolf on the back face. So if it's nighttime when Athalia's lieutenant enters the battlefield, they don't get the counters, which is interesting.
That
Um,
is wild.
yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, and well, the idea of like, and flavorfully, I can understand the idea of the beast taking over at night completely or whatever. And like, okay, I get that. But here we have another Esper Sentinel. Sir Hamilton was able to fetch up the Esper Sentinel with the Ranger Captain Vios.
And Voice of Serenity denying the greed and says, no Containment Priest for me just yet. Does not want to get it hit by Skyclave Apparition, which is reasonable. That is reasonable.
Well, and leaving the portable hole down, because the thought being, if you do have a Skyclave Apparition, I'd rather you hit this. And they have their own Skyclave Apparition back. And again, the patience of Voice of Serenity right now in mobilizing their threats.
And clearly, Sir Hamilton is kind of representing Collected Company. So, presumably, Voice of Serenity is trying to get, have a gotcha moment where you cast your Collected Company and then, boom, here comes the Containment Priest. If, it was some kind of, if there were, whatever the heck that Planeswalker is called, the Wandering Emperor, things like that in the list, I think this would be a much riskier line. As it stands, Sir Hamilton, the most likely card for Sir Hamilton to have is Collected Company. It's Beseiju, though.
Okay.
We're not collecting or Containment Priest now, just to eat that. Looks like it.
Okay.
And now Sir Hamilton knows, like, admittedly, that's still a serious bummer for Sir Hamilton.
Yeah. I mean, this deck that Voice of Serenity has, I was commenting when I first looked at the list, like, my goodness, there are 4 Containment Priests in the main. Like, that seems like such a weird specific hoser. But the truth is, with the Fragment Realities, with the portable holes, I mean, it also hoses a lot of the upside of Voice of Serenity's removal. You know, like we saw there, being able to deny that Outland Liberator coming back by hitting the Containment Priest. That's pretty darn sweet. And with Fragment Reality, I mean, that's 1 mana exile a creature effectively.
Indeed.
That's pretty
Indeed.
good.
That is quite strong. Do you just run out the Amarius Call here?
You know, again, I probably would. I don't know that it's the right play, but I think I would. Because Sir Hamilton has kind of tipped their hat that they don't have the Collected Company, or at least it certainly looks that way.
Yeah. Well,
So
and
I
if
can
they did have
appreciate wanting
Collected
to take the
Company,
shot while you have it.
they would still have to answer the Containment Priest, and now
True.
it has to be answered with Exile first because it's indestructible. So I don't know. This Sir Hamilton's got to have something special here, right? Oh, okay.
All right, Elspeth's not bad. You can do a lot with Elspeth Resplendent.
Agreed. Is this first strike counter? It is. Yeah.
Yep. Wow. So
All right.
what I see here is a primo Fragment Reality target.
Yeah, this has got to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
With Containment Priest out. Brutal.
Ouch.
Okay. So
Sir Hamilton scoops it up. Yep, they see the writing on the wall. That they didn't have an answer for the Containment Priest, and there was 8 power in the air. So Ellsworth wasn't sticking around. Their life total wasn't going to be sticking around for very long. And I can appreciate moving on to game 3. And with that, we get a game 3.
we do. Now, admittedly, Sir Hamilton's on the play. And that's like very good. If when you're the beatdown, and I believe we even talked about this last week, but when you're the beatdown, you want to be on the play. In fairness, when you're playing the control role, for the most part, you want to be on the play. You know, like being on the play is just a huge advantage in Magic the Gathering in general, for the most part.
It really is.
But particularly if Sir Hamilton can go like 1-drop into Catilda, into, you know, who knows what, like Voice of Serenity could have a very bad, you know, very difficult game here. Admittedly, oh boy, here comes a really strong hand, if I do say so myself, out of Voice of Serenity. All right, are you sticking with it? Is Voice of Serenity your horse?
I think so. I think this hand is looking good. I mean, 2 landers can always be a risky business, but when you have a Containment Priest and 3 Fragment Realities now, ooh. Sir Hamilton's starting out with a Thalia, which is going to shake up those Fragment Realities a bit, although the first one is probably just going to hit Thalia, so I mean, that'll be that. But the Containment, well, yeah, at this point, some Voice of Serenity can still Containment Priest into a Fragment Reality next turn.
Sure.
After taking 3 to the face here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like you have to Containment Priest and then Fragment Reality, the Thalia. And then maybe Fragment Reality, the Thalia's Lieutenant as well. But I don't think so, right? I would say you want to hold it just in case they have their own Skyclave Apparition, right?
Absolutely, because with the Skyclave Apparition, you would need to hit it before the trigger resolves to prevent the Containment Priest from leaving, because the moment it leaves with the Skyclave Apparition, you're not getting it back. You know, you're getting back a 2/2 token. That is not what you're looking for.
Agreed.
All right, so they see, yeah, they hold the Fragment Reality back. It is an instant, so that's okay.
Looking like Brutal Cathar.
All right.
Does this change anything? No. Like, you
I feel like the sequence is the same as what we discussed. Yeah.
Agreed. You're never going to believe this, but Brutal Cathar targets the Containment Priest.
Wait, what? No way.
Indeed, I swear. I swear. Looks like Fragment Reality going to go after the Thalia, and we're looking like prophets here. All of those cards
I do love it when a call goes right. Yeah.
It's true. Indeed. And of course, Sir Hamilton still needs to play the beatdown here and gets in with Thalia's Lieutenant. The problem is Sir Hamilton is on 2 cards, and Voice of Serenity is on 4. Oh boy.
Oh, okay. So Skyclave Apparition and a Crawl Harpooner in Sir Hamilton's hand. Yeah, I mean, getting the apparition out of reach is valuable here, but also having 3 power in the air is a pretty big deal too.
Really is. Now, admittedly, Sir Hamilton can deploy the Skyclave Apparition as soon as they make a land drop, which is likely to happen relatively soon. That's the nature of Magic. But the problem is just the number of cards, right? Do you deploy a Fragment Reality here in response? I'll use Lieutenant Gross to a 4/4.
That's true, and it's only getting bigger. Yeah.
I mean, this is just upgraded Source to Plowshares right now, which
Pretty much.
I don't know that Source to Plowshares needs to get any better.
Well, I mean that's a card actually that was printed in the Strixhaven Mystical Archive that they pre-banned out of Historic. They said absolutely not. But here have Brainstorm.
Yeah.
All right, Starnheim Unleashed. That's a card.
Do you foretell it? Or do you just make a 4/4?
That's tricky. I can see merits to both. Because if you play out the Field of Ruin, foretell the Starnheim Unleashed.
Yeah.
You can still play the Archon, and then if you hit a land, you can get 2 angels.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
Well, no, you don't even need to hit a land, right?
Oh, no, you're right. I was thinking it was 2 XX. No, you're right.
Yeah. So this, I mean, a little bit of delayed gratification here, but it feels Sir Hamilton's got an uphill climb. And folks, for those of you who haven't been paying attention, this is for all the marbles. It's game 3. This is the finals. The person who wins this is taking all of the marbles, all of them.
Absolutely.
So making a couple of 4/4 flyings when your opponent's at 11 feels like a pretty darn good thing to be up to. Land drop made, X equals 2. Sure enough, 5 power already in the air. You can afford to pay for the Esper Sentinel now. Man, it looks like Voice of Serenity going to be bringing this one home. What can Sir Hamilton draw that denies the victory right here?
I mean, it's got to be a board wipe, but I'm looking through their list and I don't see one. The Crawl Harpooner here can take out, the Archon, sure.
I mean, but is it taking out when you trade like that?
Not really. It doesn't feel good, that's for sure.
Yeah, you know what?
The Sentinel, Sir Hamilton just didn't have an answer to those 2 angels.
Oh, well, looks like you got me. Darn it. Mono white bringing it home. GG Voice of Serenity. That was a wild set of games. Glad we got to spectate there.
Wow, now that was an exciting finals, huh? If you told me that these 2 decks were going to be in the finals of the historic event today, might have half believed you. I think that Celestia was definitely a deck coming in, but this mono white min range was definitely unexpected. Congratulations to Voice of Serenity for taking down the whole event. And I want to thank you, the viewer, for making it this far into the video as well. If you're enjoying the content, please hit that subscribe button. We've got tons of MTG content on the channel, all kinds of formats, including coverage on our tournaments as well every month. So definitely check all that out. All the links are going to be in the description to the content for the commentators, my content, and for all of our tournaments as well. And I hope that you stay cheesy.